This one is 12 inches across. That is the right size.
Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today we're going to start Mammoth sunflowers. You know, those ones with the really large heads. Now, mammoth sunflowers make one large head, and they tend to be really tall, 6 to 12 feet. Now, you can direct sow the seeds in the soil 1 to 2 weeks after your last frost, or like me, 4 to 6 weeks inside before your last frost. Now it's 3 weeks before our last frost, but I have plenty of time. Here in north central Maryland, that means to start them in early April. I'm going to put them in 6-cell trays, and I'm going to use Pro Mix organic potting soil. Now, I plan to give away most of these sunflowers. It's become a tradition in my community. Years ago, any extra plants I had, I set out behind the garage and posted a sign saying they were free. And I recognized people just snatched up the sunflowers. So after that, I started sowing extras on purpose. And now we have a shelf, and people really watch and look forward to getting those free sunflowers. I have 2 trays of the Mammoth of 72 cells, so this is going to be 144 Mammoth sunflowers. I'll keep a few for myself. Now they germinate at 70 to 85 degrees. And the average germination is 10 to 21 days. Pollinators love sunflowers. Birds and squirrels too. Now, while the sunflowers are developing their heads, they're going to follow the sun. Like, for example, in my garden. The morning sun, the flower head will follow it along all through afternoon. But once the flowers fully open, they're going to freeze in place. So you're going to want to plant it where you're going to want that open flower visible. In my garden, it's really small. And if I plant them on the right side of my garden, I'm not going to be able to enjoy the open flowers. So you need to pick the right space. So again, as the blooms are forming, they'll follow the sun, but once they're open, they're frozen in place. Now, sunflowers are going to need support, so either a trellis or along a fence. I'm going to plant them in both locations. Now, sunflowers are heat-loving plants, and the baby seedlings, make sure you water with warm water. Cold water is going to cause shock. Now, not hot water. For example, my basement water here goes underground and it is icy cold. So I always get my water from the kitchen. And I make sure it's lukewarm. I've made the mistake of watering them with too cold water before. But once they're planted out, and the roots are really well established, they don't require much water. They're drought tolerant. Now they're called sunflowers because they love the sun. So they really like full sun. And if you want the tallest, biggest heads, put them in the sunniest location of your garden. If they have less sun, they're going to be shorter and smaller. Now you're going to want to wait to bring them outside to start hardening off until after the last frost. Then plant them in the garden 2 weeks after the last frost. Here, that means mid-May or after Mother's Day. Now they're going to flower midsummer. Now this warm furnace room is full, so I'm going to have to put them in that other room in the basement. Now the other room is colder. It's 60 to 65 degrees, so I'm going to need to use a heat mat. And I always cover all of my seeds with a humidity dome. It holds in the moisture and helps them to germinate more easily. That second grow room is filling up. Those are the summer flowers and vegetables that grow faster. Tomatoes have germinated, zinnias, and basil. Lettuce too. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. It's the very end of April. There's just a few days left. And it's time to start hardening off our Mammoth sunflowers. Now these seedlings are 2 weeks old. They grow fast. I bought the seeds from Baker Creek. Now they germinated in only 3 days. Now they're only going to stay outside today for 2 hours. They're going to come back into the kitchen here under these lights. Going to start hardening them off in a more protected area here on the patio near the house. Every day we're going to increase the time that they stay outside until they're out there 24 hours. But the nights are still too cold. So today we're going to start with 2 hours and tomorrow probably 4 hours. We're also going to expose them to more and more sun every day. Later, they'll be out there in the middle of the garden sidewalk. We're going to bring them back and forth inside the house 7 to 10 days to harden off. Then plant them out into the garden after Mother's Day. Here, that's 2 weeks after our last frost. Slugs and pill bugs are a problem, even on the patio. So I'm going to sprinkle on some Sluggo. Now, half of them are really dry and they need to be watered, but they're not going to be used to the cold water from the rain barrels. So I'm going to get some lukewarm water here from the kitchen. I also need to protect them from digging squirrels and curious birds. I'm going to use a cage that I made for the strawberries. So we're going to be hardening them off in and out of the house 7 to 10 days. Then planting them 2 weeks after our last frost, Mother's Day. And I'm going to put 4 or 5 in the front garden. But most of them I'm going to give away for free. It's become a tradition here, out in the alleyway, for people to look forward to the free sunflowers I put out on the shelf. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. It's time to direct sow your sunflowers. Or if you're like me and started your seeds in the basement under lights. Today we're going to plant out the Mammoth, the really tall, large-headed sunflowers. They're 10 to 12 feet tall. Now these seedlings have been hardening off for 7 days. And they're 3 weeks old. I started these seeds indoors only 3.5 weeks ago. Sunflowers love the sun, so I've picked the front garden because this is my hottest, sunniest location here on our property. If you want tall, large-headed sunflowers, you also need to space them 18 to 24 inches apart. This Hori knife is 12 inches long. Now, before they're fully open, sunflower heads will follow the sun. They'll start in the east in the morning and they'll travel over to the west. So make sure you plant them where when they're finished fully opening and they set their heads, you can see them. In my back garden, I have 2 fences, an east and a west. And if I plant them along my east fence, once those heads are fully open, they're going to freeze towards that morning sun, and my neighbors will be able to enjoy them, but I only see the backs of them. So pick a location in your garden that once the heads are fully open, you can see them. It tends to be towards east, but here in the front, they tend to get more afternoon sun, so they'll be okay. Now, mammoth sunflowers are really tall, 10 to 12 feet, and they're going to need the support of this trellis. Pollinators will love sunflowers. The bees will just flock and visit them. And squirrels, they'll love the heads. So if you want those seeds for yourself, you're going to have to net them with something. Now water well the first week, every day, until the roots get established. But after that, sunflowers are drought tolerant. They don't require watering. You also don't need to feed them. Now squirrels will dig these up, so I need to protect them with 4 pieces of hardware cloth. And I'll secure it with these landscape pins. Then I'm going to put in this little cage to protect them from me. I'm famous on walking over my plants and cutting off their heads. I also need to protect these from slugs. Hopefully they're big enough that they're not going to decimate them. But I'm going to put the Sluggo down and then cover it with mulch because the birds will just eat it up. They love it. It's organic and it won't hurt animals. Now what am I going to do with all the rest of these? I'm going to give them to my community. It's a tradition here in my alley. People look forward to getting my free sunflowers. Now you notice I use deep mulch. It's because I do a no-dig or a no-till garden method. And that's another reason I like to start my seedlings inside. So they're a nice, good size. It's better. That way they don't drown in the mulch. Now, as you know, Mammoth only make one head. They don't send out multiple branches, just that one large head. Now, check back later for an update. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. It is the end of July and it's time for a sunflower update. I just measured these and they're 12 feet tall. Wow. These are supposed to be heirloom Mammoth sunflowers, which develop one big head. But look, we've got multiple blossoms. That means whatever farm grew these grew them too close to a different variety of sunflowers. That's okay. That's been happening a lot since 2020.
Seed companies, even reputable ones, were overwhelmed with orders and have been using new growers. Probably a small farm that grew for them, and the sunflowers got mixed with another variety. But I do have 2 big heads, and the rest are small, but they're still beautiful. So mammoth sunflowers should have 1 big head each, like this one. This one is 12 inches across. That is the right size. This one is 10 inches. That's the right size too. Because mammoth sunflowers cross with other varieties, I don't save my own seeds. Every year I buy new fresh seeds. But if you want to save your seeds, you're going to need to space them, and I've read a variety of information anywhere from 500 meters, which is about 1/3 of a mile, to 3 miles apart from a different variety. And that's just not possible here. But if you have the space and you want to save the seeds, you're going to have to protect the head because birds and squirrels are just going to eat them up. But how do you know it's ready to cover? Like with a paper bag or mesh? Let me show you how you know. See these little bulbets? It means that these have already been pollinated, and it's time to cover with mesh or paper bag. And then how do you know when the head is ready to be harvested? You're going to want to wait until the back of it turns brown. And this one's not ready. How did I grow them so big? It's because here in the front, we get the most sun and the most heat, and sunflowers love heat and sun. And I also space them the recommended distance. If you space them close together, or grow them in a raised bed, or a pot, or in the shade, they're going to be smaller and thinner. Now, what am I going to do with this 12-inch sunflower? I'm thinking about submitting it to the fair. Every year, I submit 3 things to our local fair. It's only $10, and it gives me a 1-week free pass. But if I'm going to submit this, I need to cover and protect this soon. They are ready. Now remember, plant your sunflowers where the heads are going to set where you can see them. They're going to set towards the morning sun. While they're growing, the heads are going to move and follow the sun all day. But at the end, they're going to set towards the morning sun. Now I did water these the first week after I transplanted them, but after that I haven't watered or fed them. They are easy to grow. Thank you for visiting Withrow Urban Homestead. See you later. Bye-bye.